Hey everyone, meteorologist Alex Williams here with you in our Weather Impact Alert Center. And yes, we are looking at alert days heading for us as we go towards the weekend and extending all the way into early next week, as we will be met with an Arctic blast after what looks like more and more like an ice storm. And so we're definitely going to see the impacts as we go towards the weekend, hence why we're doing these updates. This one will be a little bit special. We'll run it a little bit longer for you today because we're going to introduce a fun part to it. So, give me just a moment here and I will pull that up for you. So we are going to add an interactive bit for it. And you all are going to be able to text me in your questions that you have about this winter storm. And so give me a moment here just to get signed in, and I'll give you that number. But yes, we are definitely looking at some impacts as we go into the weekend. And like I said, I think significant ice is not out of the question. That's the way that the models are trending. And of course, that's our guidance that we use. That's the way our forecasts are trending. That's the way the setup is trending. So everything's pointing more towards ice, less towards snow. However, we still might see that quick burst of snow early on as we go into the event. So let me get that number for you all. And we'll give that number out. And then you guys text in your questions that you have. If you have a specific location question, if you can be kind to me since I just moved to the area, and go ahead and include your name, your location, like city name, but then also if you could give me your county, that would really help me locate you a little bit faster, or at least know the general area that I'm talking about. Because I'm still learning geography. I'm still new. I've got an idea of where most of everything is, but hey, it never hurts to learn something. You learn every day. I mean, even as a meteorologist, I still learn lots about the weather and lots about everything else every day. All right, so the number to text is going to be 336-379-5775. Again, that is 336-379-5775. And so if you guys want to text in your questions, that's the number to text. I'll bring it back up here again in just a little bit. But let's get into the graphics because we have a lot to talk about. So I already mentioned the weather impact alert days have stretched all the way into early next week because conditions are not expected to improve all that much as we go into early next week. We're looking at icy travel, power outages as a result, and I think that's becoming something that's increasing. We'll explain why in just a bit. Arctic chill then settles in early next week. We're going to drop our overnight lows into single digits for most of us. And that means it could feel like below zero temperatures as we go Monday night into Tuesday. So very, very cold across the Triad. We're going to need supplies to last several days because you could get stuck at home. I hope that's where you are, or a hotel, or wherever you're at. You could get stuck there for several days. You need to protect your pipes, protect your home, check in on people, pets, pipes as well, and those are all things that you need to just kind of make sure everything's ready to go. At this point, we're still in our preparation stages, right? So weather today not going to be impactful, and most of Saturday is going to be all right. As we start getting past the 3 p.m. hour, that's when we need to start putting our plans into action, getting off the roads and staying off the roads, especially as we go towards the weekend. A lot of the winter storm watches that we saw originally have now been converted to warnings. We're closer to the storm, so they go from a watch to a warning as we are now approaching storms. And we see several, you can see the pink on there, that's actually not on the legend. That is an ice storm warning. And where is it? Upstate South Carolina and western North Carolina, really central North Carolina into western North Carolina, southwest North Carolina specifically. So we'll zoom here into the Carolinas. So yeah, a lot of the upstate of South Carolina also included in a ice storm warning. Significant ice accumulations are expected in those areas. And unfortunately, some gusty winds as well. And when you add ice and gusty winds, you increase power outages. One thing that our chief did talk about and share on X was that unfortunately, the infrastructure from Helene, there's still a lot of temporary poles up into northwestern North Carolina, and they're just not going to be able to withstand the same amount of ice as potentially regular poles. And so that could be an increasing issue and as we go through this storm, especially with all the ice forecasts. So I did want to make that note. So most of the triad proper is going to be encompassed in a winter storm warning. Why? Because we're going to see more than just ice. We're going to see sleet. We're going to see a little bit of some snow mixed in there as well, mainly sleet. And then on top of that, we're going to coat ourselves with a lot of ice. Ice weighs things down significantly as well. Now, you might be like, okay, so why is Raleigh not pink? They're going to be turning pink as we go later on, probably the afternoon into the evening. But remember, we get hit first, and then it moves into the triangle. So they probably will see the winter storm warning and ice storm warnings depending on what they're expecting. Now, notice here to our south and to our west, Charlotte is encompassed in an ice storm warning. So they're expected not so much to see a mixed bag of precip as they are going to see significant impacts from ice. So we'll see, that's the big reason why we're not in an ice storm warning. We're going to see criteria met, I think, in the triad for an ice storm warning. But because of the other types of precip, we've got a winter storm warning. Hopefully that makes sense a little bit. All right, let's time this out for you. So as we go into, and I'll leave myself off in case because I'm covering up Greenville-Spartanburg here, which is a pretty big city, at least twin cities there. But I'll leave myself on so I can talk to you all as we point out different things. First of all, colorization. This is snow. The purple color that you see is sleet, and then freezing rain is going to be denoted by pink. And so we are going to see this purple color start to pick up as we go towards the evening hours. So really, I think it's after about 3 o'clock as we start to go into the early evening. That's when we're going to see that first burst of snow. But notice there, that's very short-lived. And as we go into the overnight hours, we're quickly going to be overcome by sleet. And that tells me, and it makes sense with the setup, warm air is quickly nosing northward in the upstairs in the atmosphere. And so we're starting off with a little bit of a shallower layer of warm air initially. That'll take over and grow in depth, and that is really going to cause the transition from snow to sleet and then eventually to freezing rain as we go through this event. I want to also point out our surface temperatures are in the 20s. And we're going to be stuck there. So this is a classic cold air wedge or cold air damming situation as we go through this event. So here we are as we go from basically Saturday evening into Sunday morning. That's when we're going to start to see kind of the depth of warm air increase. And then also our temperatures are staying very cold at the surface. And so we are going to primarily start to see ice. Now notice here there's breaks in the precip. That's not necessarily a good thing. You might be like, oh, that means we're not going to get as much. No, on the contrary, we could actually accumulate more icing on everything because this is going to be potentially patchy, icy drizzle. And if you think about raindrops, when they hit something, they can kind of hit it and then drip down and drop off of the object. If it's a drizzle, it's just very fine mist, and it accretes and it accumulates and it just grabs onto anything it can and accumulate ice. That's what we're looking at with this situation. That's what this is showing us. Not to mention we could have steadier freezing rain as we go towards the afternoon hours and into the evening hours Sunday. So we're going to continue to accumulate ice as we go into our Sunday evening. And many of you are now starting to think about work, rightly so, as we go into Monday morning. We could still have maybe some patchy drizzle hanging around. And again, that would be freezing drizzle because our temperatures are not going to warm up above freezing until Wednesday. So that's why we are so concerned about these impacts being long lasting. There you can see it starts to clear out of us, at least some of the precip there on our early on Monday morning, but we'll still be left with the impact. So what are we going to see? We're going to see a mixed bag of precipitation. If you're closer to western North Carolina and the foothills, you're going to see better chances of snow and sleet mixing in there. As you start heading to the south and to the east, you're going to get into more of the icing. So we'll see lots of sleet, potentially for portions of the metro here in the Triad, as well as our northern counties. And then you're going to start mixing in ice and more amounts of it and greater amounts of it as we go towards, the south and east. Major ice threat once you get to the southern edge and over to the triangle and down towards Charlotte. They are looking at quite a bit of ice expected. So that's kind of how the precipitation breaks down, but this is why. So when we are talking precipitation types, warm air is very important. Where is it? How much of it do we have? How much cold air do we have? Remember, cold air was a problem last weekend. We had that transitory high, didn't lock in. We have a high pressure locked in, and it's going to continue to supply us with cold air. It's not going anywhere at the surface, so that's locked in. What we're watching is the warm air that's going to move in at about 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. And it's going to start to nose in just a little bit and kind of punch in. If you think about it like a nose, right? I have a pretty prominent nose, so mine sticks out pretty far, my Welsh heritage there. But think of it like that, right? Your nose is sticking out, and so it's pushing into the atmosphere as we start to increase the warm air, the movement of warm air advection into those lower to middle levels of the atmosphere. So initially, we'll start off as sleet, but eventually that depth of warm air grows, and we have that very shallow layer of cold air at the surface, Arctic air. So we're going to melt the snowflakes all the way into rain, and then rain is going to fall onto a surface that is primed and ready to accumulate that. And so it's going to hit an object and freeze instantly. And that is freezing rain, and nobody wants to deal with that because nobody can drive on ice. I don't care how experienced of a driver you are. So here's our snow sleet forecast. This is going to be mainly sleet, a little bit of snow mixing in there at times. Ice is going to fall on top of this, which will make it near impossible to clear. And it could sit on back streets and your neighborhoods for days to come. So do be prepared. When we say be prepared to be stuck at home for several days, be prepared to be stuck at home for several days. Oh, and don't get the milk bread and eggs. That's a whole other thing. You can check out my socials for more on that. But 1 to 2 inches of snow and sleet there as we get a little bit further south of, say, Guilford County into parts of northern Randolph County over towards Davidson County, Alamance County as well. This is the biggest threat by far, is the ice. We are going to see a significant amount of ice from this ice storm. I mean, I think it's rightly so that we're calling it an ice storm because that is the primary precipitation type on this. And depending on how quickly we change over from that sleet to freezing rain Sunday, it's going to be an extended period of freezing rain on Sunday. Most of Sunday, it will be accumulating ice. So we're talking 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch for most of the actual triad itself. Our big cities, from Winston-Salem over to Greensboro, down to Lexington, over to Asheboro, over to Burlington, Reedsville. Maybe Reedsville not quite encompassed in that, and Winston-Salem not quite encompassed in necessarily that 1/2 inch or greater. Let me tell you something. You're going to have issues if you get 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 inch. Meanwhile, you get 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, and we're talking serious issues. Trees start coming down, power outages start ramping up very fast, and we're talking over 1/2 inch of ice. It's going to be an absolutely crushing ice storm, and that could be southern portions of our metro all the way south into Charlotte, maybe over to the Triangle as well. So we're going to be in it, and this is going to be a very serious storm. Let's talk about freezing rain and the power of ice. So I talked about it a little bit already. 1/10 of an inch of ice will put a light glaze on roads, sidewalks, bridges. All right, that starts getting slick. It gets slick to walk outside. It gets slick to drive around. That's 1/10 of an inch. By the time you approach 1/4 inch, we're talking icy roads, tree limbs start to sag and start to break, and numerous power outages. And these are going to be long-lasting power outages as well because again, power crews, we only have so many of them. And, if Charlotte's getting hit, if the Triangle's getting hit and we're getting hit, we only have so many resources. So patience. I hate we don't like the term pack your patience, but pack your patience because you need to grant and give people grace during this situation because it's going to be long lasting and it will disrupt your life 100%. You're going to have disruptions to your normal daily life with this. We get up to 1/2 inch of ice. This is the last ice storm in 2014. We've been talking about it all morning. We're going to continue to talk about it. Dangerous travel on roads, widespread tree damage that was seen, long-term power outages possible, and our own chief meteorologist, Tim Buckley, brought up a really good point. The amount of tree damage that we're going to see from this, the amount of infrastructure damage and impacts to roads could be similar to what you see from a tropical system, a hurricane. trees are going to take an extreme hit from this. And remember how many trees are already down because of Helene in western North Carolina. So now we're going to be adding more trees to that, unfortunately, with this storm. As far as storm impacts going, again, I kind of broke down the sleet. It'll be sleet, snow early on, then freezing rain taking over after that. That's going to make travel almost impossible as we go into really the Sunday morning through Monday morning time frame. And then power outages are going to start to ramp up as we start to accumulate ice, especially afternoon Sunday, and that's going to get even worse Sunday night into Monday. This is what we call the Winter Storm Severity Index, and this gives you an idea of impacts. When you start seeing the oranges on there, you have impacts to daily life, right? You start seeing the red on there, we're really going to start seeing impacts. And again, this is Friday through Monday, with the greatest impacts of that kind of concentrated across the southern metro, and then back towards, say, Charlotte, towards Raleigh. And you can see parts of Guilford County encompassed in that as well. And so that's something we're going to have to deal with as we go through this system. We're just going to see impacts. So to break this down for you, whoops, as I skip over to the forecast temperatures, I thought I had the other one on there, but we can just click through it. But I also do want to get to your questions, and we have about 4 minutes here. So let me look and see if anybody put in some questions here. What is expected in Kernersville? It says I'm OB. I'm guessing, is that OBGYN? But Kernersville, of course, over there kind of right there near, I believe it's still in Guilford County, if I'm correct on that. And then, but it's very close there to the, so we're going to see impacts as well. So everybody, if we go back here to our snow map for Kernersville, let's see if I can zoom in here. I think we only have certain ones on that. But you can see if we look here, basically extreme western Guilford County here. So you can see right here, that's I-40. And so I know Kernersville is here. So, I mean, we're still looking at potentially 2 to 4 inches of mainly sleet and maybe a little bit of snow. And then as far as the ice is concerned, you can see southern portions of Guilford County here into Davidson County. I mean, we're still talking a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. Whether you get a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, or greater than a 1/2 inch, it's not going to make much of a difference. We're going to see massive impacts. We're going to see power outages expected, and it's going to be widespread and long-lasting. You have to plan for that, depending on where you're at. But that's what I would say for Kernersville. And then as far as timing goes, because you guys are further to the west, you're going to start to see things a little sooner than maybe other parts of the metro. But I would still say Saturday evening into Sunday, all through Sunday, and then into Monday. It's just going to be an ice rink across the area. All right, let's see what else we have. Guilford County. I believe that is what that was. Yes, yeah. So what time will the storm move into Guilford County? So we can go back to that. I still think anywhere between 3 to 6 o'clock is when we're going to start to see some of those impacts there into Guilford County, and that'll start off as snow, then become sleet as we especially go. I mean, you'll hear the sleet. It'll be the and if it's coming down and you get a blast of sleet, like a sleet storm, it'll be like psh. You think I'm joking. Go out and listen to the sleet, and that's exactly what it'll sound like as we go into Saturday night into early Sunday. So I would say for Guilford County that, and then, you know, the timing of that. So maybe closer to 5, 6 o'clock as we start to get that initial burst of snow. It'll kind of just pop up to the north and then maybe fill in a little bit to the south. But again, how quickly does that warm air punch its way in and ruin our snow chances and take over as sleet? That's what we do not know, and that's what we'll have to watch. Hi, Arvin. Fairly new to this type of storm as we move from the west coast. Welcome. We're happy you're here. You're in High Point in Guilford County. What type of storm will this be? I'm hearing mixed opinions. How would we prepare? Will it snow or will it be ice? It will be predominantly ice. Very confident in telling you that. You will not see much in the way of snow. You might see a little bit more sleet from that. But if you look there towards southern Guilford County, especially towards High Point, I think you're going to have to deal with potentially 1/2 inch or more of ice. and that is going to massively damage infrastructure. It's going to make roads an ice skating rink. So the best thing that you can do, Arvin, is to stay home. Stay off the roads as we go into the evening. And so I know that we just went past, so I probably got cut off. But if I didn't, keep it here with us. We'll continue to keep you updated on this storm. Whoops.
Hey, ice cold milk and an Oreo cookie, they forever go together like a classic combination. Governor Josh Stein is updating the state on the final preparations for the winter storm. Let's listen in.
of Emergency Management, Will Ray, Secretary of Transportation, Daniel Johnson, Secretary of Public Safety, Jeff Smythe, Major General Todd Hunt of the North Carolina National Guard, and the Commander of the State Highway Patrol, Colonel Freddie Johnson. Jackie Matevier and Murtado Bustillo are our Spanish language interpreters, and our American Sign Language interpreters are Stephen Holland and Karen Magoon. The latest weather forecasts lead us to expect impacts to the majority of the state starting tomorrow and lasting into next week. Between snow, sleet, ice, freezing rain, and bitterly cold temperatures, this storm is expected to cause major disruptions to your daily life, possibly for days. Our message to North Carolina is simple. This is a serious storm. We are taking it seriously, and so should you. On Wednesday, I declared a state of emergency across North Carolina to mobilize resources in advance of the storm. We've activated the State Emergency Response Team, a cross-agency group that includes the Department of Transportation, the Department of Public Safety, the North Carolina National Guard, the State Highway Patrol, and our state's utilities. The NCDOT has already put down 2.8 million gallons of brine to pre-treat the roads and is ready to salt the roads and plow them once the storm begins. The State Emergency Response Team has shipped pallets of meals and drinking water around the state in preparation. Some localities are starting to open warming centers, so check your local government emergency management's website to see what options are available near you. And utilities like Duke Energy have brought in more than 18,000 workers from around the country to help restore power where necessary. At this time, because of expected ice accumulation and cold temperatures, our greatest concerns remain unsafe travel and power outages that could last for days. So we recommend that you take the following actions to navigate this winter weather event. First, stay informed. Make sure you're following your local media, the National Weather Service, and your local emergency management agency for the latest updates and recommendations. Second, get disaster supplies ready now in case you lose power and can't leave home for a few days. You may need water, non-perishable food, medication, and other supplies for 3 to 5 days for each person and pet in your household. You may also need a flashlight and fresh batteries, a battery-operated radio, a way to keep your phone charged, and blankets and winter clothing. Visit readync.gov for more detailed information about how to prepare for a storm. Third, make a plan. Make a plan for if the power goes out, how you'll safely keep warm, what you'll eat, and who you will call in case you need help. Be ready to reach out to family or authorities for help if you're without power for an extended period of time. The effects of the storm could last for days. Fourth, stay off the roads starting tomorrow. For your own safety and that of others, please do not drive unless it is necessary. And that request will likely extend beyond the weekend. Next week is going to be cold. We expect the temperature to fall below freezing every night for the next 7 days. That means whatever ice or snow that turns to slush during the day will freeze again overnight. Black ice will remain a risk in many places into next week. So plan for the possibility that you'll be stuck at home for a few days. Fifth and finally, as you're getting ready yourself, don't forget to check on your loved ones, neighbors, and anyone you know who might be vulnerable, including the elderly. Over the past year, I've been inspired time and again by the many North Carolinians I've seen lending a helping hand to their neighbors in need. So please look out for your family and yourself and for your neighbors too. North Carolina, that's how we're going to get through this storm together. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Director Ray and then Secretary Johnson. Director Ray.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, everyone. Winter storm warnings and ice warnings are now in effect through midday Monday for the mountains and the Piedmont. A winter storm watch remains in effect farther east, and as accumulation types and amounts become clearer, the watch will transition to warnings or advisories. Significant wintry precipitation is forecast over the weekend, with major impacts lingering into early next week as dangerously cold temperatures are forecast. Ice accumulation of a quarter inch or more is likely across much of North Carolina Saturday through Monday morning. Areas across the southern mountains, higher elevations into the Blue Ridge Escarpment, and into much of central North Carolina are forecast to see the most impactful ice accumulations, and in some cases, reaching or exceeding 1 inch. As a reminder, ice accumulations of around a ½ inch of ice or more can cause an increase in downed trees or impact power lines and lead to an increase in power outages, as well as hazardous travel conditions. Based on this morning's forecast update, hazardous travel conditions are expected to begin by midday Saturday and will worsen through Sunday and may remain for several days due to those lingering low temperatures. We need all North Carolinians to remain focused on preparing for the potential impacts with a plan and supplies to support you and your family for the next several days. Unnecessary travel not only puts you at risk, but also the public safety personnel, the power crews, and the DOT workers who are working to respond to emergencies, to restore power, and to clear roadways. The State Emergency Response Team, including all our interagency partners, our private sector and nonprofit and volunteer agencies, has been activated here at the State Emergency Operations Center, as well as our regional coordination centers in Kinston, Burlington, and Hickory. We continue to support commodity distribution from our activated warehouses. As of this morning, the State Emergency Response Team has shipped approximately 65 pallets of meals ready to eat, or MREs, and drinking water to assist communities with shelter operations if needed. This is in addition to over 460 cots and blanket shipments to supplement local supply, as well as commodities that have been shipped into local communities over the past several months to assist in building local capacity. Additional commodities are shipping out from our warehouses today into tomorrow. 11 county states of emergency have been declared, and 2 county emergency operations center are activated, with many others monitoring plans to activate this weekend. Communities across the state are opening shelter locations and warming stations. For the most up-to-date information on the resources available in your community, please visit your local government and local emergency management agency's website and social media accounts. Elements of the North Carolina National Guard are active today and pre-positioning across the state to quickly assist the needs of our communities. 95 force packages will be assisting with clearing roadways from downed trees, helping disabled motorists, supplementing our first responders, and assisting with commodity distribution. These force packages include approximately 430 National Guardsmen and women and 170 vehicles, and they will be on station across the state later today. We remain in close coordination with our energy sector partners who are present here at the State EOC and will be closely monitoring power outage information and assisting any needs to quickly restore power in communities that do see outages. The North Carolina Forest Service has placed six task forces on standby to assist local first responders or state agencies with clearing roadways as soon as it's safe to do so. Each task force is comprised of saw crews, heavy equipment, and a mechanic. Additional chainsaw crews are activated, and all 100 counties are staffed with their forestry personnel. Communications personnel and equipment have been pre-deployed to assist with any degradation of 911 systems, radio systems, and phone networks. 44 caches of radios have been deployed to assist with local response efforts, and our partners at the North Carolina Highway Patrol have conducted checks of the systems that support the state's Viper radio system, used by our first responders statewide. As a reminder, 911 should only be used for emergencies. For general information, please call 211 or follow your local government and emergency management websites and social media accounts. We will continue to work with the entire state emergency response team, local and state governments, the private sector, and our nonprofit and volunteer agencies as the forecast continues to evolve to ensure we can support our 11 million North Carolinians. As we go into the weekend, it is imperative that, again, all North Carolinians are prepared for preparedness information and checklists. Please visit readync.gov. Finally, please check on your friends, your family members, and neighbors, or those in your community who may need additional support this weekend. We're going to see significant winter storm impacts, and we are stronger and more resilient together. Thank you, Governor. I'll now turn it over to Secretary Johnson from DOT.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Director Ray. Safety is our top priority at NCDOT, and it remains our key message today. With the likelihood of icy weather creating treacherous travel conditions in the days ahead, we urge people to please stay put if you don't need to be out on the roads. Staying off the roads during and after the storm allows DOT crews, law enforcement, utility crews, and other emergency responders to do their work. We're expecting a storm that is largely going to be ice-related, which makes traveling on the roads that much more challenging. Even if you have a large truck or SUV, driving on icy roads can be nearly impossible. We'll also have implemented immediate towing measures with the cooperation of the State Highway Patrol to help remove any vehicles that have been disabled, to help both facilitate clearing of the roads and also to eliminate danger for those traveling on those roads. People may notice messages that we placed on digital highway signs across the state. Crews will focus on these efforts on highways and primary routes. We will continue the effort until NCDOT and the Highway Patrol determine that it is safe to lift these measures. We're also continuing to monitor forecasts closely with the help of our partners at the National Weather Service. Forecasts help us make informed decisions and ensure we're placing resources where they're needed most. That's especially important when a storm has statewide impacts like this one. Our crews are in the process of wrapping up pre-storm preparations. As the governor noted, the department has applied about 2.8 million gallons of brine on the roads and state system. Nearly all 2,100 DOT employees who are trained to respond to such storms have contributed to this effort. They're now transitioning their focus and equipment to be ready to clear the roads as the storm moves in. This includes removing trees and limbs that may fall. Salt on hand is at 160,000 tons, and we continue to secure additional salt and distribute it across the state. So we're in good shape from a supply standpoint. We're taking all precautions possible because we aren't going to take a chance with your safety. I encourage everyone to stay informed, make safe decisions about travel, and ensure you have all the supplies you need in case this ends up being a long-term event. People can visit drivenc.gov to view the latest road conditions and other storm-related information. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to the governor for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Director Ray. If any of y'all have questions, feel free to go to the microphones on either side of the room. Yes.
Hi, Caroline Yaffa with WRAL News. So since we're expecting icy roadways, what should essential workers, state employees do to make sure that they're safe, and if the roadways are dangerous, and if they feel that it's not safe to travel, what are the impacts that could mean for the community?
Yeah. One area that we have a special concern is whenever you have vulnerable people together, whether that's at a retirement center or at a hospital, and each of those facilities have their own emergency plans. And part of that is having the preparation that folks may have to spend the night at their place of work so that they don't have to travel on the roads back and forth and put themselves at risk or find themselves unable to get back to work where they are desperately needed by the patients or residents of that community. In terms of essential workers for the state, each department, each agency has its own emergency plan and its own way to notify folks of when they should come to work and if they should come to work. Obviously, we don't want anyone traveling who absolutely does not need to, and if they can't get there safely, they should not be on the road.
Hi, this is Laura Hackett with Blue Ridge Public Radio.
I'm wondering if the state has been in touch with cell service providers and if damage to cell towers and outages are anticipated.
We have been here at the Emergency Management Center. We have our private sector partners, whether they're the utilities or they're the cell phone companies, the communications networks. And so we're in regular contact with them, and I'll ask Director Ray to answer to your specific question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the question. As the governor said, I think one of the things we continue to reinforce here is what we do is not a public sector function only. And so our commercial telecom partners are here as a part of what we do. They are here in the EOC. We are closely monitoring with them what impacts to their networks they are seeing and how then we need to pivot to adjust resources, whether it's an infrastructure issue, whether it's a technology issue, or some other issue kind of impacting their provision of service. So they are very much a part of what we do. They are here with us and are part of our state emergency response team. And as we move through this event, that's one of the areas that we're going to continue to remain significantly focused on is our network statewide to make sure that folks are able to receive any type of emergency alerts or information, certainly from local emergency services.
Just to follow up real quick, so
Through the monitoring that has already happened, any indication that cell outages will occur?
Well, we're always concerned. When you have an ice event like this, it can topple towers. It can have trees fall into towers. So there will also be an incredible demand on the system. Folks are going to be at home. They're going to want information. So we expect that people are really going to be maximally utilizing the networks, which will cause their own issues. That's one reason why we encourage folks to get battery-operated radios so that you can stay informed even if you lose communications through modern means.
Michael Perchik, ABC 11. To that point, from a staffing perspective at EOC or local county storm operations centers, what capabilities exist for them to work remotely in the event they're not physically able to get there in person?
Yeah, well, as I said, each agency of government, whether it's state agency or county agency, has their own emergency plan. So they know exactly what to do, who they've identified before the storm hits, who are emergency personnel. They've identified whether that person can perform his or her work remotely or must come into the office. Obviously, we need law enforcement, we need fire, we need EMS to be in their places of work so that when they need to respond, they can. This is one thing, unfortunately, because North Carolina has experienced so many storms of all types, whether they're winter storms like this or hurricanes, the governmental entities, they're well prepared.
As a follow-up, can you speak to the lessons learned from some of those prior storms and how you're able to kind of troubleshoot some of the issues you may have run into in the past to try and avoid them moving forward?
Yeah, I'll have Director Ray speak to the redundancies, but clearly we became too dependent on a single means of communication, which is our cell phone. And so we have worked hard to ensure that we have redundant means of communicating, certainly among emergency personnel, and I will ask Director Ray to come forward and speak more.
Thank you, sir. I think specific to the communications point that the governor was making, and I think to expand on what we talked about yesterday, I think most of the agencies you see up here on the stage, most of the agencies represented in the state EOC or our regional centers and certainly locally have taken lessons learned most recently from Helene or some of the more recent events and invested in some of the redundant satellite-based technologies for redundant communication. We have a variety of redundant communications platforms, whether it's radio caches, mobile towers, mobile data systems that are able to be deployed from a variety of agencies out across the state. Some of the pre-planning, for example, that our 911 community in the state has really been focused on the last couple of years is a failover system, so that if a local 911 center in a jurisdiction is impacted, there is a failover plan for an unimpacted area to be able to continue to receive 911 calls. And again, that's the great work that community has done in reaction to many of our events. I think broadly, we always want to take a retrospective look at what we do and how we do it and how we can get better. We've done that for every event, low-level ones or major ones like we've experienced in the last couple of years, and it's certainly one that we will continue to do as we all move through this event.
And just to add, I'll ask Colonel Johnson to come forward. He just briefed me on an investment that the Highway Patrol has done in the Viper network to help ensure its continued functionality even when a tower or two gets knocked out. And the radios. You can talk about radios.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor. To that question, so the patrol maintains the state communication system across the state. And one of the investments that I was explaining to the governor is that they have the ability to adjust. So if a tower is impacted by a storm, a tower that's in an area that's not impacted can readjust its microwave system and overlap that area. So the stuff continues to work and it can communicate all our emergency services partners that operate on that system. Then another thing we have, so if you have a local agency has their communication system that's not totally on the Viper state system, we have, Director Ray mentioned it, caches of radios. What that is handheld radios that operate on this state communication system. We have about a little over 3,000 of those. We can deploy those things into those communities and hand them to these agencies so they can operate. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions in the room? If not, we'll go to those who are calling in. If you could please identify yourself and where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Claudia Rivera Coto with Enlace Latino NC. Regarding shelters, what assurance are there in place to ensure Latino communities can access them without being questioned about immigration status or required to show state IDs or even having the information shared with ICE?
Yeah. The shelters are operated locally, and we are in contact with our county management agencies, emergency management agencies. 11 counties have so far declared a state of emergency. Others we expect will do so today. Whether or not a local emergency has been declared, many counties are preparing either shelters or warming stations, and they are welcoming all people to come in. Director, anything to add? Thank you. Any other questions?
As a follow-up to that, there are no written policies that explicitly prevent asking this type of information from the residents?
Can't speak to what the county policies are. Director Ray?
I think, as the governor said, I think our focus here at a state level and the focus of the public safety communities at a local level for an event like this is how do we provide necessary support and services to all North Carolinians. And so they are going to implement those warming stations based on their local operations. And again, their focus is how do we get people safe? So I would reinforce what the governor said is that locally they are making preparations to deal with all people in their communities.
We don't want anyone who is in need of shelter at risk of freezing to death to not seek that help.
We're not seeing any additional questions online.
Thank you all for being here.
Governor Josh Stein giving an update about the final preparations for the storm. Something he made very clear is that this is going to be a major disruption to daily life, not for just a day or two, but days on end. And his whole point was we cannot control what the storm is going to do. What we can control are the preparations that you make at home, that your city and your county are making as well. So he talked a lot about what's happening at the state level with that 208 million gallons of brine that have been put down over roads all across our state, which is a whole bunch of brine. I'm sure if you were driving around this morning, you saw salt trucks out and things of that nature in your hometown, wherever you are. He talked about how there are going to be warming centers that are at least in 11 counties right now because they have already declared a state of emergency, but also that you should check wherever your county is to see if they are going to be opening up some warming centers as well. As he's talked about what are the main issues for the next couple of days, he said unsafe travel and power outages. And why the power outage is such a big deal? Because we're expecting ice. And so we want to turn it over to meteorologist Claire Fry because she's got the latest update on what kind of accumulation we could be seeing.
That's right, Tanya. You know, over the last couple of days, we've been keeping a close eye on this, and a lot of us have been wanting that snow, but it does look like we are going to be seeing more of the sleet and freezing rain starting to build in quicker than we thought as we head into the day tomorrow. So we do have a weather impact alert all the way from Saturday evening through Tuesday morning, not only for the winter storm, but also for the bitter cold that is going to be coming in right after that, too. So the impact's going to last all the way until early next week for icy travel, for power outages, and of course the Arctic chill too. What if I told you Tuesday morning some of us could be in the single digits? You're going to need supplies to last you at least a couple of days, and of course protect pipes, pets, plants, of course, and people too. Make sure you're checking on your neighbors. So weekend winter storm kind of update here. Again, it is trending much more like a sleet and ice storm rather than a snowstorm. You should know that. It does start out starting to see a little bit more flurries when it has kind of the onset of the moisture into Saturday afternoon and evening, but it is going to change pretty quickly to sleet and then ice into the day on Sunday, which brings up a lot of concern for possible power outages, of course, and with the freezing rain that can cause a lot of issues with trees coming down and power lines too. Roads will also continue to be icy into early next week due to the fact that we're going to be seeing substantially colder temperatures well below freezing really through around Wednesday. So a lot going on here in the forecast. What exactly is going to fall? We are going to see a mix. Again, it's starting out as snow, and then we start to see more sleet mix in, and then freezing rain moves into the area, and that's going to be taking up basically from Saturday evening all the way until late Sunday night. But again, the impacts are going to last all the way until early into next week. So here's that futurecast as we head throughout this upcoming weekend, starting off as snow. Then we start to see little bits of sleet start to make their way into the area. Also, all in all, going to be a very cold weekend, well below freezing for both days. A bit more freezing rain starting to make their way into the area, into the picture by the time we step into the day on Sunday. Then mainly just starting to see that rain starting to build in to our east as we wrap up the event heading into the late Sunday at night hours and into Monday. But the impacts, again, are going to be pretty substantial. And of course, we're going to have to keep a close eye on them over the next couple of days. Tanya?
All right, thanks so much, Claire. And you know, she made a really great point about the timing of the storm and how it has shifted over the last couple of days. We're looking at a later start on Saturday and then it going all day on Sunday. And this is why this is so key about that later start on Saturday. You have time to make more preparations than maybe you thought you did. And so Kevin Kennedy took a look at some of the things you should be doing before the storm hits.
Good evening. There is still time, but it is running out fast. Before this winter storm hits, it's important that you prepare so that you and your family can remain safe.
Let's start outside. Move or secure loose items like patio furniture and umbrellas. Ice can build up and create a serious hazard. If you can safely do it, trim any tree branches that hang over your roof or driveway. Ice can build up and snap the branches. If you can't prune the branches, make sure to move your car to a safe spot. If you have salt or can go buy it, spread it out around high traffic areas like your walkway or driveway. And lastly, cover your outside faucets and disconnect the hose. As for inside, power outages are a real possibility. Have flashlights and batteries on hand, charge phones and battery packs now. If you rely on electric heat, make sure you have plenty of blankets and warm clothing at the ready. One more thing, stock up on food that doesn't require electricity to make. And if the power does go out, food will stay good in the fridge for about 4 to 6 hours, in the freezer about 24 to 48. And you can always grab a giant bin and just set it outside, since it will most likely be pretty cold. Kevin Kennedy, 2 Wants to Know.
Yeah, those are some really good ideas, especially since you have so much time that you can now prepare for the storm. Again, that storm timeline shifted a little bit, so you have all of today, you have tonight, you have Saturday morning before the mid to late evening before things start coming through in that area. So we want to make sure that you know that we are here with you throughout the entire storm, and of course after as well. We have live cut-ins every hour on WFMY Plus. That starts today. You can download on your TV and you can watch for free.
All right, thanks, Tanya. That was an eye-opening news conference. We learned the scope of this response, the preparedness that is going into trying to make sure what could be a very historic storm is as effortless as possible for first responders and, of course, for everyone who has taken the steps to prepare. Now, we know a lot of the supplies, if you didn't already get them, are hard to find.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is he said, we're taking this seriously and we need you to take it seriously too, honing in on those 2 key topics that he mentioned yesterday, just talking about the roads are going to be bad and you need to be prepared to be without power. So he outlined a bunch of big numbers. As Tanya mentioned, 2.8 million gallons of brine, and Duke Energy has bought in more than 18,000 workers from around the country. He elaborates a little bit more here.
Our greatest concerns remain unsafe travel and power outages that could last for days. So we recommend that you take the following actions to navigate this winter weather event. First, stay informed. Make sure you're following your local media, the National Weather Service, and your local emergency management agency for the latest updates and recommendations. Second, get disaster supplies ready now in case you lose power and can't leave home for a few days. You may need water, non-perishable food, medication, and other supplies for 3 to 5 days for each person and pet in your household.
All right, again, if you're just joining us, this is WFMY News 2 at noon as we get a better idea of what is going into the response to this storm. Another key point the governor mentioned is that if you are an essential worker, you have to be at work this weekend. Try to get to your workplace before the worst of this hits, or else you might not be able to make it into work safely.
Yeah, the ugly truth of all of it is, we're going to have a lot of people sleeping at work over the weekend, maybe even into next week. Let's go ahead and bring in meteorologist Alex Williams. He's been tracking this system for us, and, it's definitely one that we have to be aware of and serious. Actually, meteorologist Claire Fry joins us now.
Both keeping tabs on this system. And it is a very dangerous situation when you get freezing rain and sleet. That can be impactful for all roads again, and that's going to continue into early next week too. So that's why we have this weather impact alert extending from the beginning of that snowfall, turning into sleet and into freezing rain all the way into Tuesday morning. Although the snow, freezing rain and sleet stops late on Sunday night, the impacts will continue through early next week due to just how cold we are expecting it to be. Bigger impacts too. Icy travel, power outages could very well be widespread across the area. If you have supplies, make sure they'll last you at least a couple of days, and also go ahead and protect your pipes well ahead of time. We are going to be seeing snow at first, but it's going to start that way and then quickly change over to sleet, and then going to be seeing that ice kind of develop as we head into the day on Sunday, making for some very icy roads, hazardous travel, and even if you're taking a walk, but just with the dog along the sidewalks, just going to want to watch your step. So what exactly is going to fall for us? Well, to the south and toward the east, major ice threat has been developing, and it is continuing to develop too. We're going to get a little bit of snow, but more than that, going to be seeing higher sleet values and also the ice too. So kind of timing out this system into Saturday afternoon, you'll notice the blue and purple at first, and that's the snow starting to move in. Then we're starting to see more and more sleet build into the equation, and then freezing rain. Freezing rain freezes on contact with whatever it meets, whether it be power lines or limbs. Both of them can come crumbling down underneath the weight of the ice, and that is how hazardous that it can be. Starting to wrap up later into Sunday evening, especially into the day on Monday, but the impacts again going to continue to last into early next week. We'll talk a little bit more about what you can expect with the frigid temperatures on the way. Single-digit temps on Tuesday morning coming up.
It's definitely going to be cold. Thank you so much, Claire. Right now, Duke Energy crews are gathering at Four Seasons in Greensboro. It's serving as a command center as crews prep for this incoming storm.
Yeah, WFMY News 2, Giselle Thomas is there as crews get staged. Giselle, this brings back a sense of deja vu for me. I've been where you are standing in many previous storms. This is really kind of the artery of what's going to happen with the power response.
Yes, and there's a lot of things in the work here. Right now, we're right outside of that staging area. There's actually a couple dozen of these bucket trucks that are right out here, and you can just see this lineup. But the best part is this is just a few of what's to come. A spokesperson from Duke Energy says that they're expected to have 400 bucket trucks in this area alone, compared to all throughout different various places of the state. Now, the setup right now is in stations. You have the bucket trucks that we just saw over there. Also, there are some fuel trucks that are making their way here. You can see there's one lined up there just to make sure that people here have ample supply. Also in the staging area, there's an additional tent that has extra equipment and just resources that crews can use to sustain them as they are out in the field during these various days. Now, a spokesperson for Duke Energy shares that about the impact of ice and also its effect that it could have on power lines.
It only takes about a quarter of an inch of ice to begin to bring tree limbs down off trees onto power lines. Whereas for snow, it takes about at least 6 to 8 inches typically before we start to see problems. So where that snow ice line evolves and whether that's ice on top of snow or whatever it is, will determine what kinds of outages that we see. And that's something we're going to be watching very closely.
Now, Duke Energy also tells me that it's setting up an extra command center in Winston-Salem. Right now, that location is still to be discussed. But something else, just seeing everybody gather here, it's really amazing to see. Remember that these linemen and line women, they are leaving their families to come and be able to restore power in your homes. So just also grateful for them being here, and it's really amazing to see it all in real life, everybody lined up here. A spokesperson from Duke Energy also tells me that some of the people here have traveled all the way from Florida, even Indiana, as they are working as mutual partners here with Duke Energy. So we're told around 4 p.m. is when things will really start to gather and pick up. And again, we're expecting to see about 400 bucket trucks right here in this area. Live in Greensboro, Giselle Thomas, WFMY News 2.
Yeah, we definitely need to be thankful for all those crews and the sacrifices they're making and their families making too. Right now, both Greensboro and Guilford County are among the cities and counties that have state of emergencies in place in preparation for the storm.
Yeah, a lot of this is procedural. It cuts through some red tape. It's giving first responders more time to prepare and easing restrictions on supply transport. Road teams have started, as you heard the governor say, pre-treating the roads, targeting major routes and bridges that tend to freeze first. City leaders say they have plenty of salt and more on the way if needed. Some ice, or a lot of ice really, is the main concern in certain parts. The city says getting the salt out early will help break up ice formation and allow sunlight to do its job.
All right, so did you know this? Guilford County has an alert system that sends warnings straight to your phone. It's the acronym for Guilford Emergency Alert Notification Information. They send alerts about weather, law enforcement situations, evacuations, or other public safety incidents. As we prepare for an ice storm, a warning about some sort of emergency could really come in handy. Just go to readyguilford.org to sign up. We did just that before the show, and it took about 90 seconds to complete. Over in Alamance County, their system automatically duplicates weather warnings and pushes them out to residents.
Well, this storm, as I mentioned, is really nostalgic. Several other big storms we've experienced over the past few years, perhaps none as significant as this. We'll have to see. One of our most recent bad ones was March 2014. I remember that, a pipe burst in my apartment that year. Nearly 80,000 people in the Triad were without power 3 days or more after nearly a half an inch of ice coated everything in sight. Mayor Mary Kay Abuzawader was on the city council at the time.
You couldn't go anywhere. There was no way to traverse this city because it was pretty much covered in ice. And you could hear the tree limbs breaking from the ice. And it was like you were hearing something, some kind of explosion.
Abuzawader said the gift of preparation is in our favor this storm. Having the heads up allows us to all prepare better. The best way is to stay off the roads if you don't have to be anywhere and it's not an emergency. Go ahead and stay home and work from home.
So with a storm coming, you need to have the WFMY News 2 weather app downloaded on your phone with those notifications turned on. That way you can get updates from the most accurate weather team in the Triad. Still ahead, the trial of Isaiah Ross continues this afternoon. The jury is working to reach a verdict. We have an update after the break.
All right, we're on top of breaking news right now. The governor's response to what is to come with this massive winter storm. North Carolina remains under a state of emergency. At a news briefing, his second in 2 days, he and emergency leaders outlined their plan. They went over all the supplies and the extensive road prep that has already happened as we're anticipating not only snow, but also ice.
That's right. The two biggest concerns really are the roadways and power outages because of the sleet and freezing rain. Unfortunately, Megan, not going to be a nostalgic kind of winter weather. It's just going to be a dangerous one. And he urges you guys to take it safely at home. I mean, even on the phone with my family, you know, a lot of them are like, well, it seems like we're going to get something. No, all the models are agreeing that we will. And also the governor saying they have already put out 2.8 million gallons of brine. You've probably seen that striping on the runway.
All right, let's take a listen to his recap of what's to come.
Between snow, sleet, ice, freezing rain, and bitterly cold temperatures, this storm is expected to cause major disruptions to your daily life, possibly for days. Our message to North Carolina is simple. This is a serious storm. We are taking it seriously, and so should you. On Wednesday, I declared a state of emergency across North Carolina to mobilize resources in advance of the storm. We've activated the State Emergency Response Team, a cross-agency group that includes the Department of Transportation, the Department of Public Safety, the North Carolina National Guard, the State Highway Patrol, and our state's utilities.
Yeah, we're under a weather impact until Tuesday. So school next week is to be determined. Officials are warning you to try to stay off the roads as much as possible, not only for your safety, but the safety of emergency crews who have to be out and about dropping the salt and dropping the brine. They don't want to have to weave in and out of cars who are having trouble on the roads. Also, of course, stock up on foods and have an emergency plan for power outages.
Our weather team continues to stay on top of this storm as it draws closer. Let's go ahead and bring in meteorologist Alex Williams. Alex, we have today just figured out the exact timing of when everything is going to come in.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those impacts that it's going to be lasting days, not just this weekend, but into next week because of the bitterly cold temperatures here. There's a look at the 7-day forecast, and so we're definitely going to be dealing with some of those impacts there. Really, this starts as we go towards the weekend and kind of through the entire weekend. So we'll start off with some snow mixing with sleet at times. And then as we go into our Sunday, it becomes a full-on, really freezing rain event. And this looks very much like an ice storm. This will be a crippling ice storm that people remember for quite some time. So there's our impacts. You can expect, and I think you should expect, power outages that will be very long-lasting, lasting days after this event, unfortunately. So we'll start to see that snow. There goes the sleet taking over, the purple color you see, and then the pink takes over. So all the different colors taking over. The pink is freezing rain, and that is going to bring, I think, the most significant impacts. It'll be a skating rink on the roads. We're going to see power outages widespread, and this will be one of those storms, I think, that people will be remembering in North Carolina for quite some time. At least it's shaping up to be that way. Hopefully it doesn't, but that's what everything is pointing to at this point. So again, if you're further to the south, you're going to deal with the ice storm impacts. If you're further to the north, you'll see that mix of mainly sleet, maybe a little bit of snow in there as well. We're going to break down all of the impacts, the timing, everything you need to know coming up in your full forecast a little later.
Right now, Duke Energy crews are gathering at the Four Seasons in Greensboro. It's serving as a command center as it has for many years, and crews are preparing for this incoming winter storm there.
It's always so impressive to see the fleet of line workers assembling there really from all across the country. Giselle, what are you learning about the power response that is to come?
Yes, so right now there's a lot of people that are gathered here. There's about a couple dozen of these bucket trucks right here in this area. Now get this, we're told even though there's a couple dozen now, there's supposed to be 400 that's going to be taking up just this parking space alone at the Four Seasons. So there's really a large presence that's going to be here, making sure that they're on hand and ready to go as soon as this storm hits. Now, a spokesperson also says that the setup is really in stations. You have the bucket trucks over there. Also, there is a fuel truck over here just to make sure that there's ample supply of fuel needed to make sure that these crews are able to keep on going. Over in the command center, there's also an additional tent that has equipment and also resources that can sustain crews as they're out here in the field. We know they're expecting to be out, although they might be here at this moment, but these crews can be out for several days on hand. So they want to make sure that they have everything that they need. Now, a spokesperson for Deuce Energy shares the impact of ice and also how that can impact power lines.
It only takes about a quarter of an inch of ice to begin to bring tree limbs down off trees onto power lines. Whereas for snow, it takes about at least 6 to 8 inches typically before we start to see problems. So where that snow ice line evolves and whether that's ice on top of snow or whatever it is, will determine what kinds of outages that we see. And that's something we're going to be watching very closely.
Now, Duke Energy says that it's also expecting to set up an additional command center that looks similar to this in Winston-Salem. That way they're able to have linemen and linewomen all throughout the Triad at a time, but also just being here for these few hours, seeing them come together, talk, it also just really shows the community coming together to help others. We know that these linemen and these linewomen are leaving their families to come and help your family and also restore power. So it's so great to see just the community here. You can see some of them are also just double checking what they have in their trucks, making sure that they have all the supplies that they need. And again, later on today, we're expected to see a lot more trucks come into the area. So this site is just going to get busier and busier, and we'll make sure to be there all throughout the rest of the day. Live in Greensboro, Giselle Thomas, WFMY News 2.
All right, some great information there.
And right now, both Greensboro and Guilford County are among the cities and counties that have states of emergencies in place in preparation for tomorrow's storm.
Yeah, this is giving first responders more time to prepare. It cuts through some red tape on getting supplies to and from different locations. Teams have already pre-treated roads. We heard the big number from the governor, 2.8 million gallons of brine already dropped. City leaders say they have plenty of salt and more on the way as needed. Ice is a big concern. The city said getting that salt dropped early can really help in the grand scheme of things.
And you may know this, you may not, but Guilford County has an alert system that sends warnings straight to your phone. And that system is an acronym for Guilford Emergency Alert Notification Information. What they do is they send alerts about weather, law enforcement situations, evacuations, or other public safety incidents. As we prepare for this ice storm, a warning about some sort of emergency could really come in handy. Just go to readyguilford.org to sign up. We did it just before the show this morning, and it took about 90 seconds to complete. Over in Alamance County, their systems automatically duplicate weather warnings to push them out to residents.
All right, this might have you thinking back to other ice storms we've had over the last decade. One of our most recent bad ones was March 2014. Nearly 80,000 people in the Triad lost power for 3 days or more. We were among them after nearly half an inch of ice coated everything in sight. Mayor Mary Kay Abuzawader was on the city council at the time.
You couldn't go anywhere. There was no way to traverse this city because it was pretty much covered in ice. And you could hear the tree limbs breaking from the ice. And it was like you were hearing something, some kind of explosion.
Yeah, it was bad. Transformers were blowing, pipes were bursting. It was not a great situation. Abuzawader said the gift of preparation is to our advantage in this storm.
With this storm coming up, you need to have the WFMY News 2 weather app downloaded on your phone and go ahead and make sure the notifications are turned on. That way you can get updates from the most accurate weather team here in the Triad. Still ahead, the trial of Isaiah Ross continues this afternoon. The jury is working to reach a verdict. We'll have an update coming up.
With a winter storm a few days away, I need to make sure I have the essentials. I got my milk, I got my bread, I've got my eggs. Wait a minute, am I trying to make French toast here? No. And these are not the best items to stockpile when a winter storm is coming. Why? They're perishable. If I leave the milk or eggs out of the refrigerator, bye-bye, they're gone. And if you lose power, there goes your refrigeration. Bread doesn't have very good nutritional value by itself. However, if I add peanut butter, that's a little bit better. And then if you add other items that are non-perishable items, such as protein bars, or maybe even cereal, these are great alternatives, as well as canned goods. Think of things like canned chicken, canned tuna, canned vegetables, canned fruit. The world is your oyster. Just don't get milk, bread, and eggs for a winter storm.
Okay, so you probably know this story. We've been talking about it for a while now. Today, the jury is deliberating in the trial of Isaiah Ross. He is accused of shooting and killing 18-year-old Devin Clark and 14-year-old Lyric Woods back in September 2022. The trial has gone into its 9th day with the jury working towards a verdict. WFMY News 2's Amber Lake has been in the courtroom for the last 2 weeks. She joins us now with what we can expect for today.
Jurors are back at work today in the trial over the murders of Lyric Woods and Devin Clark. Jurors started deliberating yesterday, and they're now reviewing key evidence yet again, including crime scene photos, Christian Sykes' interview with law enforcement back in 2022, surveillance video from the Petro gas station showing Isaiah Ross getting gas after the shootings, and cell phone data from all 3 teenagers. The judge approved the request so jurors can closely examine the evidence as they weigh their decision. They're working to decide whether Ross is guilty or not guilty of first-degree murder in Lyric Woods' death, and whether he's guilty or not guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, or voluntary manslaughter in Devin Clark's death. The jury was able to come in this morning and review that evidence. They watched the interview that Sykes gave law enforcement. They looked at the crime scene photos, and they watched the footage from that Petro gas station. They also took back that cell phone data back to the jurors' chambers. They should be deliberating right now, and we'll keep you posted from what happens here in the courtroom here in Orange County.
All right, as the trial continues today, we will be on jury watch. When a verdict comes in, we'll be streaming it live as soon as the court is back in session. If you're not already there, which you are, of course, watching this half hour, but tell your friends going forward if they want to download WFMY Plus, they can do so on their smart TV and watch for free. All right, back to our big story of the day, this pending winter storm on the way. Alex Williams tracking everything, and it looks like it's really going to be a mixed bag.
Yeah, and I think it's going to trend more impactful ice storm. And this is going to be one that somebody across the Carolinas is going to remember for a long time, even maybe portions of our viewing area. It's a beautiful day out in the weather garden. I wish this weather would stick around for the weekend, but that is not to be. we are going to have weather impact alert days. We're talking the weekend and then stretching in through Tuesday because temperatures afterwards are going to drop significantly. We're talking the Arctic air. And then as we are talking about the impacts that we're going to see, there's our future cast. You can see the snow starting off as we go towards kind of the evening hours of our Saturday. So we're talking 3 to 6 o'clock, there'll be a burst of snow. It'll be very quick. It won't be long-lived, and then sleet takes over. So you're going to hear the sleet through the overnight hours, Saturday night into Sunday morning. And at some point, Sunday morning, it keeps trending earlier and earlier, which is not good news. We will see the transition from sleet to freezing rain, and we will continue to see impacts from freezing rain, unfortunately, as we go through really most of our Sunday. Freezing drizzle could be left over Sunday afternoon, evening. And then you can see this just moderate band here of icing. And that is just going to bring significant icing, unfortunately, to parts of the Triad. Now, as we look towards our Monday, notice this gets temperatures up near freezing. I doubt that's going to happen. I don't see any warming with this system. We're going to be stuck in that wedge of cold air. And experience so far has told me we don't warm up from those very quickly. We stay cold. So we are expecting that mixed bag of precipitation, as Megan just alluded to there. We'll see basically mainly sleet with a little bit of snow mixed in, as you saw, and then icing. It is going to be a significant ice storm, and I think that's really the thing that we need to focus on. Not so much where's the sleet, where's the snow, but where is the ice? And it's going to encompass a lot of our viewing area. In fact, we just updated this graphic and moved the half-inch ice or more up into parts of the Triad. This is dangerous ice. Widespread power outages will be likely. We will see impacts on the roads. We will see damage to infrastructures. We will see damage to trees. It's going to happen. When you get this much ice, it is catastrophic. I hate to use that term, but you can see here in this graphic about what I'm talking about. Last time we had an ice storm in 2014, we saw half-inch of ice, and we could see maybe a little bit more amounts in certain areas. So this is something to take very seriously. Stay off the roads on Sunday, especially once the freezing rain starts, and impacts are likely going to last for days into next week.
That huge winter storm is closing in on the Triad. It's an icy giant with a massive footprint. Dozens of states are facing weather advisories, watches, and warnings, and at least 10, including ours, have already declared a state of emergency. Reed Binion reports.
You think about travel, you think of the dangers outside. This, like you were saying, this is a triple impact.
A menacing storm with a massive footprint is set to hit more than half of the country with a potentially historic blast of ice and snow.
Half the country's population is going to see some sort of winter weather impact.
Some areas in the storm's path already dealing with crippling conditions. It all starts Friday in the plains, where the storm's massive pool of moist air begins to clash with Arctic air. Bone-chilling temperatures pushing the storm eastward.
We have about 70,000 tons of salt ready to go in our 275 plows.
Major cities in the Northeast could get their largest snowfall in at least 4 years. That includes New York, where officials are mounting a massive battle plan to prepare all 5 boroughs. Southern states are bracing for destructive ice from freezing rain, the storm's most serious threat, one that could cause extended power outages.
It's just entirely premature for them to be able to know how many people will lose power.
Ice could also make roads very hazardous.
Latest forecasts show a widespread event that's likely to spread ice throughout the state of North Carolina.
Air travel will also likely be impacted. Airlines including American, Delta, Southwest, and United have put out travel advisories and are letting customers rebook or cancel travel scheduled over the next several days. I'm Reed Binion reporting.
All right, so Delta Airlines is canceling some of its flights across 5 states ahead of the storm. You'll hear this a lot over the coming days. Check your travel status wherever you're going, whether it's by air or by road. It's not going to be a good weekend to go anywhere, or if you have guests coming in town, they might not be here for their trip either. This is an unfortunate stat to keep in mind. 1,800 people die in crashes every year in snowy or icy conditions. If you do need to be out and about, maybe you're an essential worker, drive at your own risk and go slower than you think you need to go.
Don't be in a rush to get nowhere. Take extra time and, be prepared to sit on. If you do slide off the road, that it's going to take us extended ETAs to get to you. We're in a normal day, it takes 30 to 45 minutes to get to a customer, where it could take hours to get to you, with the weather conditions and road conditions.
Tow truck drivers say if possible, stay inside because you're not only posing a danger to yourself, but also others on the road.
But if you do need to get in your car, it's been several years since we've dealt with lots of ice on the roadways like we will be doing starting tomorrow. You might be out of practice when it comes to driving on them. So when you're driving at just 35 miles an hour, for example, an icy road can increase a normal stopping distance by 10 times because tires lose that traction, and it's very critical. Maybe you've heard this before, but it's a pretty good refresher. When stopping, don't hold down on the brake. Pump it instead. If your car ends up sliding, steer in the direction you want the front of your car to go in.
Right, it could be a challenge to free your car from snow and ice. You've heard the saying to put your windshield wipers up before it starts falling to make it easier to defrost, and that's true. AAA says lifting the blades can keep them from freezing and also put less stress on the springs. To avoid these situations, consider putting a blanket or tarp over your windshield before the storm. So you just take it off and you should be good to go afterward. Experts say it's important your wipers are in good condition and your fluid is suitable for below freezing temperatures.
Another thing you need to think about this weekend is the pipes in your home. Frozen pipes can burst, leading to thousands of dollars in damage. Mackenzie Burns has tips from plumbers to help protect your home.
Business is booming at Port City Plumbing Supply, and they're busier than ever this week. Take these little pipe connectors. Normally, a plumber might grab a few all year. This week, they're walking out with dozens.
1-inch PVC, Schedule 40.
Chick Coleman and Haley Rogers say there's one reason. Professionals are gearing up to save customers' pipes as temps are expected to tumble soon.
Water's the only thing in nature that expands when it freezes. Everything else gets smaller. But water, for some reason, expands, causes a lot of damage, a lot of heartache.
And when that water expands inside your pipes, the damage can be devastating.
We've had $100,000 worth of damage done from water running in a house.
CFPUA spokesperson Cami Bellamy explains the sub-freezing temps are prime for busted pipes and budgets.
The real issue rises when the temperature gets down below freezing for several hours, especially into the 20s.
So what can you do? Bellamy says start with the basics. Drip your faucets overnight to keep that water moving.
We strongly recommend taking those preventative measures now, checking on any of your outdoor pipes, draining your irrigation system, things like that.
Back at Port City Plumbing, Rogers and Coleman say insulation around your pipes is also key. But use something like foam or rubber and shy away from newspaper or towels because they can get wet. And you guessed it, freeze.
Nobody wants damages. Number one, nobody wants to be without something as critical to our survival as water, and it's so easy to prevent.
Because if you don't take action now, you could not only be left without water, but facing a hefty plumbing bill and dealing with a massive headache.
All right, so we are watching that weather impact alert days. I want to leave you with this. This is what's called the Winter Storm Severity Index, and it's put out to give you an idea of impacts. That 4 that you see in red, that is major impacts. You will see disruption to daily life. And then the 3 there, that's the moderate impacts that most of the triads painted in. That's still expecting impacts, maybe not just quite as severe, and it has to do with the amount of icing there. So I think that paints the picture that we will see impacts as we go through this weekend, and those could extend into early next week because of the cold air. So I don't want to downplay the cold air next week, single digits, and it could feel below 0 at times as we go Monday night into Tuesday. So we're watching that super closely, and again, the winter storm trending more icy and sleety, if that's even a word. Now it is, right? Sleety and icy than snowy. So we might see a quick burst. I hope the kids can get some sledding in very quickly.
Yeah, maybe quickly.
Before the ice takes over.
Right, and before it's just too cold where it becomes dangerous for them to be out and about.
And you had mentioned about a ½ inch of ice, right? For the triad.
For parts of the
Greensboro.
triad.
That's
yeah,
devastating.
especially- Yeah, that's horrible. So hopefully those trends go down. That's what we want to see.
Fingers crossed.
All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you on WFMY Plus for more news and weather updates throughout the day.
Hey everybody, meteorologist Alex Williams here with you with another quick update. It's not necessarily good news because it does look like the ice amounts, or at least right now, are trending up. Now, hopefully they'll start to trend down as we get closer to the event. But we're still dealing with that weather impact alert day as we go into our basically Saturday evening, and that'll continue on through our Tuesday. We could see icy travel, power outages, Arctic chill, the whole 9 yards, right? Oh, let me go ahead and route the right source in here for you guys. There you go. So Saturday evening into Tuesday evening again, we're going to expect you to be stuck in place at your house for several days. You need to protect your pipes, your infrastructures, your house, and there's several really great resources on our website, Who Wants to Know, WFMY.com. Click on the Who Wants to Know section. Tanya Rivera's got you all, situated. You can check out all of her great advice there and some of the people and the professionals she's talked to on how we can winter prep our house, because that's going to be important in the days to come, I think, as we get closer to this storm. So let's check in on the storm. A lot of changes as far as the watches have now really become warnings. And that just makes sense because we're getting closer to the event. But do you see this purple color here? Let me get my little clicker tool, or my little pointer tool, I guess. Let's see, it's right here. So do you see this purple color? These are ice storm warnings, and you can see it actually encompasses a good portion all the way down towards almost Houston. So eastern Texas, northern Louisiana, up through the Arklatex into western Tennessee, and then of course the Carolinas, and even up into parts of the Cumberland Plateau of Tennessee, dealing with ice storm warnings, and the rest of us dealing with winter storm warnings. So if I pop this off, myself, of course, was what I was talking about, but if I pop that off, you can see the winter storm warnings are really for more Greenville, Spartanburg area, upstate South Carolina into southwest North Carolina, whereas you see the winter storm warnings extend across the foothills all the way through the Triad and really most of our viewing area. Now, there's a reason why that is. It's because we're going to see more than just freezing rain. If we were just going to see freezing rain, then yes, we are talking really, we would see an ice storm warning, not a winter storm warning. But we're going to see sleet, and quite a bit of it potentially, mixing in with maybe a little bit of snow early on, and then things will become icy as we go through the duration of this event. So let's time this out for you. What does this look like? So here's the timing. We're about 5 o'clock in the evening here on our Saturday, and really after about 3 o'clock we could see that initial burst of snow. And I think the better chance of snow, of course, is going to remain along the North Carolina state line up into Virginia. And then you see the purple on there, that's sleet. That'll be taking over very soon. So if I just kind of step through this here, you can see that the Triad goes from snow very quickly over to sleet. And then we're going to stay sleet for a good portion of the evening. Overnight, you'll hear the tattering of sleet outside. If you go outside, it'll sound pretty loud. It'll almost sound like a heavy rain because you're raining ice pellets. Not to be confused with Dippin' Dots. Dippin' Dots are grapple, and while we maybe see a little bit of that, I think it's more going to be ice pellets, which are more translucent and don't necessarily look like Dippin' Dots and provide horrible traction on area roadways. So keep that in mind. Sleet, even though it's not as nasty as ice, still has its bite. We'll see impacts on the area roadways for sure as we go through this event, especially Saturday night into Sunday morning. So that's kind of the impacts you can expect Saturday night. If you're coming back into the Triad, the other thing is it's going to be cold. Temperatures are going to be in the 20s and teens for most of the day on our Saturday and into our Sunday and into our Monday, into our Tuesday. I mean, we're just not going to get above freezing until Wednesday at this point. So it's going to be a prolonged period. Now, the other question that we don't know that we're going to have to continue to just hone in details on, I think we do start to see freezing rain. Models are trending kind of a little earlier into our Sunday morning. Now, where you see it break up like this Normally for rain, that would be a good thing. But in this case, this means it's drizzle. And freezing drizzle is easier to attach onto anything that is below freezing and to start to grow and accumulate a little more rapidly than, say, freezing rain, which can hit an object and then run off of it. And so maybe you get like the dripping on it, but it doesn't accumulate as fast as a freezing drizzle, which it looks like we'll see periods of freezing drizzle. Temperature is still 20 degrees. Now, models go back and forth on this, looking at some of the latest high-resolution models. Some buy a little bit longer period of sleet. Some don't buy that, and they transition us back to freezing rain pretty quickly, and we stay freezing rain throughout the day. Once we hit freezing rain, we're not going back to sleet, I don't think, because I don't see the cold air building back in deep enough to get sleet to come back. This is concerning here, though, as we look towards Sunday evening. We are at least looking at the potential there of seeing more freezing rain, and that would then accumulate decently quick, especially if we initially start to accumulate some of that freezing drizzle. Then when we get the freezing rain on top of that, periods of that, especially if it's light, it's just going to accumulate on everything and glaze on everything. And this is why it could be significant impacts. This I don't buy. I do not buy us warming up to freezing Monday morning at midnight. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the wedge is going to stay around longer. At least in my experience, that's how it's been. I've been bit too many times by models trying to erode the cold air too fast, especially when it's locked in place. So what's going to fall? Mixed bag of precip for the triad. Really lots of sleet, some snow, maybe, and then ice. It's really going to be an ice storm, I think, at this point. Snow, some sleet up towards the foothills to our northwest, and then you can see really from Greensboro areas southward, we might even start shifting that a little further north, updating this graphic, but Davidson County, Randolph County, and then down to Montgomery County, parts of Alamance County, it could be a major ice threat with significant ice accumulation of quarter inch or more. Unfortunately, it was trending in the direction of more than less, which is not good news. Snow and sleet forecast, this is what it's looking at, about 2 to 4 inches of mainly sleet, maybe a little bit of snow mixed in there. I think it's going to be mainly sleet. And then you can see that 1 to 2 there from, say, southern Guilford, southern Alamance, over towards Davidson-Davie County, and then into northern portions of Randolph County. And then further to the south, Montgomery County, just really not getting much of anything. Freezing rain, again, that risk, I think, has gone up. This just really doesn't look like a good scenario, and I can't stress it enough. Sunday is going to be just dangerous to be out on the roads, to be outside in general, because even if you're not on the roads, if you're outside, tree limbs can fall down thanks to the increasing weight of the ice that's building on them. You don't want to be outside on that. You don't want to be sitting in cars around any of those trees. Power lines could start to fall as well, and so infrastructure will be impacted. Power outages, widespread expected. So unfortunately, that is not good news, but that is what we're looking like we're going to deal with now. Hopefully, over time, we start to see the trend go back further to the south. But I do think at least southern portions of our viewing area, Randolph County, Davidson County, and also down to Montgomery County, watch out, because this could be a significant ice storm for you. Now, for the rest of us in the tribe, we're going to have to watch and see how the cold and warm air battle it out and settle things. I still think if we get a quarter inch of ice versus a half inch of ice, that really doesn't make a difference. It's going to be horrible conditions as we go Sunday night into Monday morning. That commute is going to be downright dangerous. It's going to be a skating rink. And you can only do so much trying to melt some of that ice. And NDOT, North Carolina Department of Transportation, are going to do a great job. They're going to get the roads prepared as best they can. But we also need to be prepared to just stay home off the roads completely as we go through our Sunday. And then as we're going to Monday, give yourself, give your neighbors, give everybody grace, because we're all going to be trying to get to work on very bad conditions, very bad roads, potentially. So we need to just give ourselves grace and to give each other grace in this storm. Our own Chad Silver said that, and I really like that a lot. So freezing rain impacts. Here's what we're talking. a tenth of an inch will cause things to become slippery. You could get isolated power outages. We get up to a quarter inch, which is probably likely at this point for a good portion of our triad. Icy roads, tree limbs sag and start to break. You start to get numerous power outages. Not to mention, if you get anything more than that, up to about half an inch, you're talking dangerous travel on roads, widespread tree damages, long-term power outages, and that's going to be possible for the southern portions of our triad south to Charlotte. I think Charlotte could see some really high impacts from this. I know Brad Panovich has been talking about it a lot. So if you don't follow him and you're in the Charlotte area, you can look at him. Here in the Triad, we've got you covered, of course. So it's going to start as snow a little briefly and then switch to sleet pretty quickly. And that's going to be overnight Sunday, really overnight Saturday into Sunday morning. At some point, we'll take over with the freezing rain. It's going to take a while for that to start to grow and accrete on surfaces. So we'll see power outages start to become more widespread, I think, as we go towards Sunday late afternoon into the evening, into Monday morning, and then really into Monday and potentially for days after that once you lose power, because crews are going to be spread out across the entire state because most of the state is dealing with this. So that's the big takeaways, I think, as far as what we're going to be dealing with. There's our 7-day forecast. You can see we're going to see that transition take place again Saturday night into Sunday, starting to get nasty, really nasty on Sunday, especially with the freezing rain. And then as we go into Monday and Tuesday, it's just going to be so cold, we're just not going to see much in the way of melting. So roads really won't improve all that much. Tuesday morning lows could be in the single digits, and it could feel even colder than that, below zero. That's definitely a possibility. So that's what you need to keep in mind as far as, we don't need two of me on there. That's what you need to keep in mind as we go through this weekend, as we go through next week. Again, give each other grace, give yourself grace. We'll get through it together, and we're going to continue to keep you updated until then.